I'm meeting you through a recorded session today. So unfortunately, I will not be able to take any questions. But if you do have questions, please record them and we can take them up on the 11th of July when we meet. All right, so the last week we were doing time value of money. If you all could recall, we did present value, future value calculations. We discussed why time value is important. Yeah, and we will continue from where we stopped last week. And we stopped with present values. Can you all remember? Okay. So the next area is on annuities. Now, what is an annuity? An annuity is a fixed payment which you receive over a period of time. Right? So the payment is fixed. That is the crucial thing. It doesn't vary. Right now, for example, every year you might receive a payment of $100,000. Right? Every 31st December or 1st January, you receive $100,000. So that is fixed. For the next 10 years, it is fixed. Right? So the amount is fixed for a given period of time. That's called an annuity. An ordinary annuity has regular periodic payments that occur at the end of each period. Right? So, periodic payments that occur at the end of each period. Right? So if there are payments that come up, let's assume there is a 5-year annuity where you get $100 each year. Right? The same payment is received each year for a period of time, given period of time. That's called an annuity. Okay. So this is a $100 annuity which you receive over a period of 5 years. A 5-year annuity of $100. Right. Now, when this is the case, if you look at each cash flow, you take the first one. The first cash flow is received 1 year from today. You receive $100, right? So you can calculate now. If you forget all the other cash flows, you take only the first year's cash flow. Is $100 that you receive after 1 year. So what you can do is you can calculate a present value of the first year's cash flow based on the present value formula, future value over 1 plus R to the power n. Right. So that's called the present value of an annuity. Likewise, you can calculate all the present values and add it up. So you get the total present value. Right? So future value of an annuity. How do you calculate the future value of an annuity? Now these are the annuities. What is the future value? What it means is, let's say this is invested at a rate of 10%. So if you get $100 each year for the next 5 years, when it matures, let's say at the end of 5 years, you get the future value of the first investment, then the future value of the second, the future value of the third, future value of the fourth, and future value of the fifth annuity. So add all of these up, you will get the total future value of this annuity. That's called the future value of an annuity. It is based on the future value formula. Future value is present value 1 plus R to the power n. Okay, so this is what we covered last week, and this is an extension. Instead of one cash flow, you're looking at a series of cash flows, and you calculate present values as well as the future values, and you can total them up. Right? Okay, so in the future value of a cash flow of an annuity, once you calculate all the future values, you will know what you receive when this annuity matures. Okay, so if you are investing $100 at a rate of 10% each year for the next 5 years, you will know what amount you will get when the annuity matures in 5 years. That's called the future value of an annuity. And how do you calculate the future value of an annuity? Is given by this equation. The future value of an annuity is the annual payment into 1 plus the interest rate to the power n minus 1 divided by the interest rate. Right? That's called future value of an annuity. Now, fortunately, you don't have to remember this equation. Okay. It will be given to you at the exam. Not easy to remember. You don't have to memorize. Yeah, and even I can't remember. Okay, so I also have to use. That is the formula, which again I repeat, you don't have to remember, right? So you don't have to lose a lot of sleep if you don't remember this. Right. So let's calculate the future value of this annuity. It's a payment of $100 each for the next 3 years and going at an interest rate of 5%. Right. So $100 each is today 1, 2, 3. You receive $100 each for the next 3 years. You asked to calculate the future value. You need to substitute into this equation. Right? The payment is $100. 1 plus the interest rate is given as 5%. And you need to simplify this equation. You get 315.25. Right? Now, this is what differentiates the boys from the men. How do you interpret this answer? 315 cents, 25, how do you interpret? Okay, what was at your stage, what matters is not just the calculation, but understanding. And what do you mean, or what do you understand by this 315 cents, 25? How do you interpret it? What you can say is receiving 315 cents 25 in 3 years is the same as receiving $100 each for the next 3 years at an interest rate of 5%. Right? So whether you receive 315.25 one shot in 3 years, or you receive $100 each year for the next 3 years and you invest at 5%, the result is the same. There is no difference. You should be indifferent between the two. That is what it means. Right. So the next one is the present value of an annuity. The present value of an ordinary annuity is the sum of the present values of the individual cash flows. Right. Like what we discussed earlier. It is the present value of each and every cash flow. Each and every cash flow. What is the present value? So the same thing. Let's calculate present value. Right. So this is the future value, and let's calculate present value. Okay. So present value also, the formula is there. You don't have to memorize. That is the good news. Very difficult to memorize. It will be given to you at the exam. You will receive $100 each for the next 3 years. So the annual payment is 100. 1 divided by I is the interest rate. 5% minus 1 over 5% times 1 plus 5%, and N is 3. $272 32. Again, what matters is how you interpret this. That is what really matters. As a banker, as a senior banker, you should be able to interpret this answer. That is where the value addition really comes. Mere calculation, anyone can do. You ask a grade 5 student or grade 2 student, they can do the calculation. How do you interpret? Receiving 272 cents 32 today is the same as investing $100 each year for the next 3 years at an interest rate of 5%, right? So if you get 172 cents 32 today, or if you are told that you will get $100 each year for the next 3 years at a rate of 5%, you can invest. It is the same. There is no difference. You should be indifferent between the two. Right, so let's try these questions. Question number 1. Assume that you plan to buy a condo 5 years from now, and you estimate that you can save $2,500 per year. You plan to deposit the money in a bank that pays 4% interest, and you will make the first deposit at the end of the year. How much will you have after 5 years? Right. All right. So you're planning to buy 5 years from today. $2,500 a year you're saving. And you plan to deposit the money in a bank that pays 4% interest. You will make the first deposit at the end of the year. How much will you have after 5 years? So which equation to use? What are you supposed to find? The present or the future value? Question is, how much will you have after 5 years? After 5 years, how much will you have, right? That means you are supposed to calculate the future value of this annuity. So the future value is, let's use the equation. Payment is 2,500 times 1 plus I is 4% to the power 5 divided by 4% minus 1 over 4%. You get 13,540. cents 81. I hope this is clear. And the interpretation again is receiving 13,540 in 5 years is the same as investing $2,500 a year for the next 5 years at a rate of 4%. Okay. Right. So question number 2. For an ordinary annuity with 5 annual payments of $100 and a 10% interest rate, how many years will the first payment earn interest? And what will this payment's value be at the end? It's a very simple question. It's for an ordinary annuity with 5 annual payments of $100, right? So let's draw the timeline. Five annual payments of $100. And a 10% interest rate. How many years will the first payment earn interest? So the first payment comes at the end of the first year. At this point, now it will earn interest for how many years? Right. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4 years. Right. 1, 2, 3, 4 years. So it will accumulate interest for 4 years. What will this payment's value be at the end? Very simple. It is a future value calculation. It is not an annuity calculation, right? So don't get distracted by the question. If you say this, it's may not be straight away an annuity question. You have to read the questions carefully and understand what is inside the question. You need to answer the question, not what is in your mind. So the present value will start with 100, right? And 1 plus the interest rate 10% compounded 4 times, 4 periods. $146.41. Next one. Assume that you are offered an annuity that pays $100 at the end of each year for the next 10 years. You could earn 8% on your money in other investment with equal risk. What is the most you should pay for the annuity? If I may delete this. So you offered an annuity that pays $100 at the end of each year for 10 years. You could earn 8% on your money. In other investments with equal risk. What is the most you should pay for the annuity? Right now, what is the most you should pay for the annuity? When are you paying for the annuity? You are investing in it today, at this point. So if you make this investment, according to this question, you will earn interest at rate of 8% for 10 years. And every year it will give you a payment of $100, right? So if you make a certain payment today, for the next 10 years, you will get $100. So that's an interesting product, something that you can offer to your customers. You place a certain deposit today, every year will give you so much of cash. Right? So this is the present value of an annuity. Present value of an annuity is, again, let's use the equation. So it's a payment into 1 over I times 1 payment is $100. 1 divided by 8%. $257. Sorry, N is 10 years. That comes to 671.01. So I hope this is clear. So you can calculate the present value as well as the future value of an annuity. Now the next one is on perpetuity. So what is a perpetuity? What is the difference between an annuity and a perpetuity? Well, in an annuity, you receive the same payment periodically for a given period of time now. The difference in a perpetuity is the same payment continues for an indefinite time period, right? It continues into perpetuity. There is no end. Now, for example, this would have been a perpetuity. There is no end. That means it continues, the payment continues to 11, 12, likewise into infinity. There is no end. And you keep receiving an infinite number of payments. How do you calculate the future value of an annuity, of a perpetuity? Future value of an annuity is simple. No? How do you calculate future value of perpetuity? You can't. Why? Because there is no ending period. No? So there is always a cash flow that comes. You can't calculate future values for perpetuities. But you can calculate the present value of a perpetuity. How? How? An annuity or a perpetuity is a derivative of an annuity, right? So you can use the present value of an annuity formula to calculate the present value of an perpetuity, of a perpetuity. The only difference is n goes to infinity. That means the time period is infinite. It's not finite, it is infinite. Right? So you can use the present value formula of an annuity, where the n is infinity. Okay, so let's write it down once again. It is the payment into 1 plus I minus 1 over I into 1 plus I to the power infinity. Right? Infinity. When this component is infinity, 1 plus I, it's a number which is more than 1 is infinity. When that is infinity, this entire number becomes infinity. Right? So this entire thing is then infinity. Because this is infinity, 1 plus I is infinity. Into the power I is infinity. So 1 plus I into the power infinity is infinity into I is also infinity. This entire component becomes infinity. Right? Then it becomes payment into 1 over I minus 1 over infinity. Now 1 over infinity is 0. So it's payment into 1 over I minus 0. So it's payment times 1 over I, which is the payment divided by I. Right? So the present value of a perpetuity, the present value of a perpetuity is the payment divided by the interest rate. Simple as that. Very easy to remember. This you need to remember. You have to remember this. The present value of a perpetuity is the payment divided by the interest rate. Very simple. Perpetuities are securities that promise to make payments forever. The present value of a perpetuity can be found with a simple formula, which is 1 over R. Note that we cannot calculate the future value of perpetuity since payments go on forever. This value would be infinitely large and thus meaningless. Consider a British console example. Consider a British console that pays $25 annual payment. If interest rates are currently at 5.2%, what is the value of this console? So it's a payment which you receive annually, $25 for an infinite time period. It's a perpetuity. You are supposed to calculate the present value of this perpetuity. $25 divided by 5.2%. 480.77. So what does it mean? What does this 480.77 mean? It means receiving 480 cents 77 today is the same as receiving $25 a year for an indefinite time period at a rate of 5.2%. So I hope that is clear. Right. Let's move on. Let's write these questions. The US Treasury offers to sell you a bond for 585 cents 43. No payments will be made until the bond matures 10 years from now, at which time you will be it will be redeemed at $1,000. What interest rate would you earn if you bought this bond at 585 cents 43? Right. It's an interesting question. The US Treasury offers to sell you a bond for 585.43. No payments will be made until the bond matures in 10 years. At which time it will be redeemed for $1,000. So in 10 years, it will be redeemed for $1,000, which is the future value. Today, what you pay is 585.43, the present value. When it matures, you receive the future value of the bond, $1,000. What interest rate would you earn if this was bought? If you bought this bond for 585.43. So the question is, N is 10. What is your interest rate, or what is your return? In other words, simple question, right? Which formula do you use? Use the present value formula or the future value formula? Can you decide it? They're the same. No? So present value is the future value divided by 1 plus r to the power n. Now you need to find r, the return, right? So 1 plus r, you cross multiply. You remember grade 2, you did cross multiplication. Cross multiply 1 plus r to the power n is the future value divided by present value, right? Then you take the nth root. 1 plus r is future value over present value, the root n, and r is future value over present value, nth root minus 1. If you substitute the values, future value is 1000, present value is 585.43, n is 10 minus 1. It's a return of 5.5%. So this is question number 1. I hope it's clear. Let's move on to question number 2. Microsoft earned 12 cents per share in 1994, right? It earned 12 cents per share, earned per share. It's called earnings per share or EPS. EPS, right? It's 12 cents per share. $19.94 earnings per share, 12 cents. Ten years later, in 2004, it turned 1.04. In 2004, it earned earnings per share of 1.04. It recorded earnings per share of 1.04. And its growth rate during the prior 10 years was 24.1% per year. If that growth rate were maintained, how long would it take for Microsoft's earnings per share to double? Sorry, I'm reading the wrong question. And so 10 years, going back to the second question, Microsoft earnings per share was 12 cents per share in 1994. 10 years later, in 2004, earnings per share was 1.04. So what was the growth rate in earnings per share over the 10-year period? All right. What was the growth rate over the 10-year period? Again, you have the future value, then you have the present value, and you have the time period. So you need to calculate R again. That's the present value, future value over 1 plus R to the power n. 1 plus R to the power n, you cross multiply, you get 1 plus R to the power n is equal to future value divided by present value. One plus R is future value over present value n root. R future value over present value n root minus 1. So future value over present value. Future value 1.04 divided by present value 0.12. N root n is 10. 10th root minus 1. Is 24.1%. The R is 24. Okay. I hope it's clear. Simple calculation, I'll wait too. Again, we are using the basics. At the exam, you will only get tested the basics. You should know the basics thoroughly. If you know your basics, then it's a piece of cake. Right. So let's move on to question number 3. Microsoft 2004 earnings per share were 1.04, and its growth rate during the prior 10 years was 24.1%. It's identical to what the previous question. The growth rate was sustained. How long would it take for Microsoft's earnings per share to double? Two 2004 earnings per share 1.04. Growth rate during that period, prior 10-year period was 24.1% if that growth rate were maintained, right? So you're going at 24.1%. How long would it take for Microsoft's earnings per share to double? So how long will it take for the earnings per share to become double? Means double is 1.04 times 2, which is 2.08. How long will it take to double? So this is the present value and you have the future value. You need to calculate time period. So again you use the formula present value is future value or 1 plus r to the power n. So you cross multiply 1 plus r to the power n is future value over present value. And you need to calculate n. Now how do you calculate n? Yeah, you need to use logarithms. Right? What you learned in grade 2, logarithms n. The logarithm of 1 plus r is equal to future value over present value. N is future value over present value, so into 1 over 1 plus logarithm of 1 over 1 plus r. We'll keep it like this and substitute n logarithm of 1 plus r is 24.1%. Future value 2.08 divided by present value 1.04 is 2. So n is 2 divided by the logarithm of 1.241. N sorry, I made a mistake. Right? You need to get logarithms of both sides. You can't get logarithm only of one side, right? This is logarithm of future value over present value. So n is the logarithm of 2 divided by the logarithm of 1.241. $3.21 years. Right, so that's question number 3. Now the good news is logarithms, although you learned in grade 2, it will not get tested at the exam, right? Unfortunately, it will not get tested beyond the scope of your syllabus, although you learned it in grade 2. The last question, what's the present value of a perpetuity that pays $1,000 a year beginning 1 year from now if the appropriate interest rate is 5%? Very simple question. Okay, what's the present value of a perpetuity that pays $1,000 a year? Every year you get 1,000. Indefinitely. Interest rate 5%. So the present value will be the payment divided by interest rate. The payment is 1,000 divided by interest rate 5%. Simple as that. $20,000. Okay, so that's it on time value of money. If you all have any questions, you can ask next week when we go back live. But, it's very simple. So I hope everything was clear. Let's move on to capital budgeting. So capital budgeting. Now these are the areas that we are going to cover. Okay. The terminology sounds quite complicated, but it's very simple, very basic. What is capital budgeting? Why do you need to budget your capital? Why do you need to budget your capital? Because capital is it unlimited or is it limited? Capital is a limited resource. It's not unlimited. No, it's not available in abundance. But you have only limited amounts of capital. You cannot have more capital. It's not like renewable energy, no? Because sources of capital are limited, right? The total amount of capital in a country is a constant. So out of that, you will receive only a small portion, which means it's very important that you ration and budget your capital. Otherwise, you will run out of capital. If you run out of capital, major problem, right? For one thing, there is no way you can absorb shock. You can't expand. You can't compete. You can't do long-term investments without capital. Analyzing projects that may be profitable, long-term, large capital infusion, important for the future of the organization. So on the capital budgeting, these are the things you should do. You should analyze projects which, in terms of profitability, in the time period, whether capital inflows are required in the future, and how important is the project for the organization. So these are the things that you should focus on when you're doing capital budgeting. Right? It's important because capital is limited resource. So steps in capital budgeting. First one is you forecast cash inflows and outflows. You should know exactly what amount of cash is coming in and what amount of cash is going out. Right? Remember, capital budgeting needs to be based not on profits. If it's based on profits, it's called accounting rate of return. But capital budgeting should mainly focus on cash flows. And so it's a cash flow based technique, not profits. Very important point. You need to assess risk of the cash flows. So if there are any doubts that you will receive cash flows, you should assign a probability. You should give a weightage as to what amount of what is the probability of losing the cash flow? What is the risk of this cash flow? Now, for example, if you take COVID-19, this lockdown period, there is a probability that you might lose some of your inflows. Right? Because if you're a bank, repayments might slow down. Some of your customers might, they might come across lots of stumbling blocks, and they might find it difficult to repay some of their loans, their borrowings. So cash inflows might dry up. Right? So there's a probability of cash inflows drying up. Then cash outflows might exceed, because everyone will want loans. No, there's moratorium period. Government is also pushing all the banks to lend. So everyone will want loans. There will be more outflows coming up. Now, this is something you never planned. If that is the case, how can you align yourself with requirements of your customers? Then you need to estimate the weighted average cost of capital. So what is weighted average cost of capital? What do you mean by weighted average? Weighted average. Yeah. Weighted average. Now, say for example, you are buying apples, right? Let's say you go to Cargill's. And let's say you buy 10 apples at 100 rupees each. Then you go to Fields, you buy 20 apples at 150 rupees each. Maybe you go to Laughs and you buy 5 apples at 80 rupees each. Okay. So how do you calculate the weighted average cost of an apple? Very simple. You need to Yeah, you need to calculate the total cost. Right, so it's 10 into 100,000. 20 into 150 is 3,000. 5 into 80, 400. And total it up, 4,400. Total number of apples, 35. Right, so you have spent a total of 4,400 on 35 apples. So your weighted average cost will be 4,400 divided by 35. $125.71. That is going to be your weighted average cost of an apple. Right. So likewise, instead of apples, if this was your capital, right, and let's say this is your ordinary shares or voting shares. Right. Let's say you have, I need to change the columns. This is the cost. And let's say this is the amount. Okay, voting shares. Say cost you 10%, and you have in millions, 100 million. And let's say you had non-voting shares. Let's assume the cost is 20%. You had 150 million non-voting. Then maybe preference shares. Oh, sorry. Let's say you have debt of 5%, 80 million. Right? How do you calculate weighted average cost? Same thing, same concept. 10% into 100, it will cost you for a year 10. 10% into 100 for annual cost is 10. 20% into 150, annually it will cost you 30. 5% into 80, annually it will cost you 4. So your total cost comes to 44. And you have capital base of 250, 330 million. Right. So you're incurring a cost of 44 million on a capital base of 330. That gives you the weighted average cost of capital. $13.33. Your WACC will be 13.33%. Weighted average cost of capital 13.33%, and that's the WACC or weighted average cost of capital. Okay. Now we are in the steps of capital budgeting. So you have forecasted your cash flows, you have done a risk assessment, then you have calculated your weighted average cost of capital. The next step is to discount cash flows, right? So you have your cash flows, inflows and outflows, and you also have your weighted average cost of capital. Now, to discount cash flows, you need to know your cash flow as well as the discount rate, right? So in the case of capital budgeting, you know your cash flows and you're discounting at the weighted average cost of capital. So the discount rate you use is the weighted average cost of capital. Right, so the next step is independent and mutually exclusive projects. Now, independent and mutually exclusive. What is the difference between independent and mutually exclusive? Right. Well, independent means, now, say for example, you are not married, right? And you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, right? So you're not married, no? You have a girlfriend or a boyfriend. So is there a restriction of having a boyfriend or a girlfriend from each and every district in the country? There is no restriction. You can have as many as you want. If you want, you can have one per country, not district, but country. Right? No restriction at all. Okay, so having one boyfriend or one girlfriend is independent of having another boyfriend or a girlfriend anywhere you want. That's called independent. Mutually exclusive means now one day you get married now. So when you get married, can you have one wife or one husband from every district? Or one wife, one husband from every country? That is not allowed. That's called mutually exclusive. If you have one wife or one husband, you can have another husband or a wife, right? Not allowed. So one wife or one husband will exclude you from having another wife or a husband, not a spouse. Not tolerate. That's called mutually exclusive. If you have one, you can't have more. So likewise, if you are doing a project, so there might be instances where you need to make choices and you can't get into everything. You have limited resources, you can't do each and everything. You should then focus on, well, if you had unlimited amounts of capital, then it doesn't matter, right? You can do everything that comes your way. But if your capital amount base was limited, then you'll have to pick and choose what you're going to get into. So if you have access to unlimited capital, then accepting one project might be independent of accepting another project. Any project that is profitable, you can accept for as long as you have enough capital. But if capital is limited, that is not the case. You only have to pick, the projects which are most profitable or beneficial to you. Right? And this is purely from a financial point of view. Okay, so let's go through the note. Project is independent if selection of one project has no impact on cash flows of another project, right? So if a project is independent, that means you select one, you can select another. There is nothing stopping you. The project is mutually exclusive if selection of one or more has an impact on cash flows of other projects. So if you select one and it excludes you from selecting anything else, it is a mutually exclusive project, right? So you need to remember that. Okay, payback period. What do you mean by payback period? Payback period means how long it takes for you to recover your investment. The time period it takes to recover the investment, right? How long it takes to recover the initial investment using cash flows that occur from the project. How long it takes for you to recover your initial investment. It does not consider cash flows received after the payback period. Now that's the downside of payback. You only look at cash flows that you receive until the payback period. Whatever happens after that is not considered. That's the bad side of payback. So let's do this example. There is a project, a 3-year project. Starting today, 1, 2, runs for 3 years. And you get cash flows of your investment is an outflow, so it's marked negative 100. Then the first year you receive 10, second year you receive 60, third year you receive 80. So these are your cash flows. The cash flows are given and you are supposed to calculate the payback period. Right. Your cash flows are given. How do you calculate payback period? Right. Now, you know the time period and you know the cash flows. What you do next is you calculate cumulative cash flow. Cumulative cash flow means from one period to the next, what is the total, right? Now, immediately you are spending 100. This is now 100 minus means at year 0 is there's an outflow immediately of 100. Maybe your capital infusion is 100. So the capital is going out, money is going out. 100 negative, then next year you receive 10, inflow of 10. Right? So it's 100 negative this year plus 10 next year. So the cumulative is minus 100 plus 10. At the end of the first year, immediately you will have negative 100. Then after the first year, at the end of the first year, you will have minus 100 plus 10 is minus 90. You end up with minus 90. Then the next year you receive 60. So your cumulative is minus 90 plus 60 minus 30. Then the third year, you're short of 30 or 30 minus, you're receiving 80. You will end up with 50. So these are your cumulative cash flows. Now looking at these cash flows, you will see that at the end of the project, you end up with positive cumulative value. And that means you have more inflows than outflows. On the payback period, what you need to know is where does it become 0? At which point does it become 0? How do you calculate that? Now, it goes from a negative to a positive position, right? And the transition happens somewhere in between the second and the third year. So the second year you have a negative 30, and during the third year you receive 80, right? Which is 0.375. Yes. So your payback period is 2 years, 2.375 years. 2.375. That is your payback period. That's how you calculate payback. Okay, so I hope this is clear. 2.375 is going to be your payback period. Then let's calculate the payback period of project B. Similar basis. is A. Payback for A is 2.375. Then for B, you have again a 3-year project. Your cash flows. Investment is 100. 70, 50, and 20. 70, 50, and 20. Again, you get your cumulative cash flows. So at the end of immediately you end up with negative 100. In the first year, minus 100 plus 75 minus 25. Then minus 25 plus 50 is plus 25. 25 plus 20 is 45. Sorry, it's not 75, it is 70. Right, so what is the payback of B? Now it moves from negative to positive somewhere between first and second year. So payback will be 1 year plus. You're short of 30. Second year you get 50, which is 1.6 years. Project B, the payback is 1.6 years. Right now, out of A and B, which one is better? Purely based on payback. Now, before you go to that, you take project A, 3-year project, initial cash flow is 100. B, 3-year project, initial cash flow 100. And so, in terms of capital infusion, they are identical. And in terms of the time period, again identical. Right. So, what are the differences? Now, A gets 3 cash flows, 10, 60, and 80. B also gets 3 cash flows, 70, 50, and 20. And so, again, 3 cash flows. The total that they get is also different. In fact, the total that A gets is 10, 60, and 80. So that's a total of 150. B receives total of 70, 50, 20, which is 140. And so A has a higher cash flow than B. Right? A gets more cash flows than B. Okay, so now what is the situation? Which one of these would you prefer? If you were an investor, where will you put your money? You put in A or in B? How would you make this decision? Now, as an investor, these are the decisions you will have to make. Where do you put your money? Where do you invest? Right? So that is one thing. Now, until you all think that over, how do you interpret this payback period? Right? Project A has a payback of 2.375. B has a payback of 1.6. How do you interpret this? A payback of 2.375 for A means it takes 2.375 years for you to recover your cash flow or your investment. If you undertake project A, it takes 2.375 years to recover your investment if you invest in A. Then if you invest in B, it takes you 1.6 years to recover your investment. Okay. In terms of payback, B is constant. because your investment can be recovered in 1.6 years. A, your investment will take 2.375 years to recover. Right. So purely on payback, going by the payback, which one is more attractive? Yeah, purely based on payback, B is attractive. While actually B is looking more sexy. Why? Shorter payback period, unlike A. So if you are an investor purely based on payback, you will go for B. This will be the preferred project. But what if you had unlimited amounts of capital? What if you had unlimited amounts of capital? Then you will prefer both. Why? Both will pay back. There is a positive payback for both. Because you can recover your investments if you undertake either of them. So both are profitable. You can do both if you have enough capital. But if you are short of capital, then you have to do the best. In terms of payback, it is the project which has the shorter payback period that you should prefer. Okay, so in terms of payback alone, without considering any other factors, you should prefer B. Right? Okay, so I hope that was clear. Advantages and disadvantages of payback. So what are the pluses and minuses of payback? Payback, it's easy to understand and easy to interpret or to explain. Right? Meaning any donkey can understand and any donkey can explain. Very easy. Then the negatives, it doesn't consider cash flows after payback. Whatever happens after the payback period is ignored. Right? After 2.375 years, you don't care what happens. B, 1.6 years, after 1.6, you don't care what happens. Immaterial. Then it doesn't consider time value of money. Time value of money, can you all remember? Cash flow discounting and all that. So these are the pluses and minuses of payback. Now to address the payback, not considering time value of money, you have what is called discounted payback. Right? So discounted payback takes into account time value of money. So discounted payback will look at time value of money. Right. So let's look at these cash flows again. let's look at these cash flows. This is again A. There is an initial investment of 100, then 10, 60, and 80. Now, what you do is a discount rate is given, 10% discount rate, right? So, what you should do is you need to calculate the present values of each of these cash flows. You need to calculate present value. Present value, remember, future value divided by 1 plus r to the power n. Okay. So the 100 is received today, that means n is 0. The present value of 100 is 100 itself because it's received today. And the present value of 10 is 10 divided by 1 plus 10% power 1. It's 60 divided by 1 plus 10% to the power n is 2. And 80 divided by 1 plus 10% to the power 3. These are the present values. $9.09. $49.59. $60.11. Okay. So these are the discounted cash flows. Okay, so you got your cash flows, then you discounted at the discount rate of 10%. Now, once you get the discounted cash flows, you need to calculate the cumulative discounted cash flows. Cumulative discounted cash flow. That means you have to add up each of these minus 100. Minus 100 plus 9.09 minus 90.91. Then minus 90.91 plus 49.59. Minus 4132. So minus 4132 plus 60.11. 18.79. Okay, so beyond this, it is the same. So this is the only additional step you need to calculate discounted cash. Because it's called the discounted payback technique. Discounted payback. So all cash flows need to be discounted. Right. Now the payback period is to identify the same way. You cross from minus to plus between the second and third year, right? So it's 2 years You're short of 41.32. And that year you receive 60.11. $2.68. Payback is 2.68. Yes. What you need to remember is payback is calculated in years. Right, so that's project A now. Shall we calculate project payback for project B also? What is the payback for project B? You have a 3-year project, cash flows 100, 70, and 50. Your investment is 100, then you get 70, 50, and finally a 20. So the same steps, you need to calculate present value of these cash flows. Present value is the future value divided by 1 plus R to the power n. Present value of the investment is 100. First year cash flow is 70 divided by 1 plus 10% to the power 1. Let's say the discount rate, let's assume again is 10%, same discount rate. And second is 50 divided by 1 plus 10% squared. Third is 20 divided by 1 plus 10% cube. And you get discounted cash flows. And the minus 70 divided by 1.1. 63.63. $50 divided by 1.1 squared. 41.32. And your cumulative discounted cash flows, right? You calculated discounted cash flows. Next step is the cumulative discounted cash flows. minus 100. So minus 100 plus 63.64. 36.36 minus plus 41.32. 4.96 plus 15.03, 19.99. So your payback is you go from minus to plus between the first year and the second year. So it's 1, and you're short of 36.36. You receive during the second year 41.32. $1.88 years. That's how you calculate payback. Right? Okay. Now, which one is longer? Payback or discounted payback is longer? Discounted payback is longer. Why? Because you are looking at discounted cash flows which are less than the original cash flow. So usually, discounted payback will be longer than payback. Because you got 1.6 on the normal payback, but discounted payback comes to 1.8. Okay, based on discounted payback, which project will you prefer if the projects are mutually exclusive? If they're mutually exclusive, you can pick only one. You can't pick both, which means you will go with B. A will have to be ruled out because it takes a longer period to recover your investment. But if the projects are independent, then of course you can go for both because both have payback. That means you can recover your investment. Right. So that is payback. I hope it was clear. So the pluses and minuses of discounted payback is identical to payback, except discounted payback has an advantage that it considers time value of money, which normal payback does not look at. Right? Everything else is identical. Right. So the next one is on net present value. Now, have you all heard of present values? Present values. 7 days ago we did. Last week we did present values. Yeah. Remember, present value is the future value discounted at a discount rate. Present value is future value divided by 1 plus r to the power n. Right. Now, net present value means the total of all the present values. Total of all the present values. If you all remember annuities. Now, for example, annuities, series of cash flows, which if you want to get the present value of the annuity, it's a series of cash flows discounted and added up. You see the present value of the annuity, right? So likewise, if you add all the present values of a cash flow of an investment, you get what is called the net present value. Net of all present values is called net present value. Right, so net present value is the present value of inflows minus present value of all outflows. Then the investment decision comes if net present value is positive. If you have positive net present value, that means the present value of all inflows are greater than the present value of all outflows. So if net present value is positive, you need this. In case of mutually exclusive projects, select the one with the greatest net present value. So if projects are independent, select all that gives a positive net present value. If mutually exclusive, take the one with the greater net present value. That means if you're supposed to eliminate one project, you need to select the project with the greater net present value, and you have to drop the one which gives the lower net present value. Right? That's if the projects are mutually exclusive. But if they're independent, for as long as net present value is positive, you can accept any project. Any project can be accepted if net present value is positive and you have infinite amount of capital. That means if the projects are independent. Mutual exclusive, remember, group for the highest NPV. Independent, anything that is positive is okay. Right, so let's try this example again. Project A, same cash flows. But actually, for me, of course, it's very easy. I can use what I wrote earlier. But let's do it from the beginning. So, discount rate 10%, 3-year project, investment is 100, then you have 10, 60, and 80. Okay. Now the next step is to calculate the present value of cash flows. So its present value is the future value divided by 1 plus r to the power n. Present value of investment which you make today is the same. It remains at 100. The present value of first year's cash flow is 10 divided by 1 plus 10% to the power 1. Second year's cash flow is 60 divided by 1 plus 10% to the power 2. Third year's cash flow is 80 divided by 1 plus 10%, power 3. Right, so your discounted cash flows will be 100. $9.09. 49.59. $60.11. So these are the present values. Then net present value is the total of all present values. So these are present values. Present values. Total of all present values will give you net present value. $18.79 is your net present value. Okay. So I hope this is clear. Now, how do you interpret this net present value 18.79? If you have to interpret, what it means is the present value of all future cash flows received from project A at the weighted average cost of capital at a WACC of 10% is 18.79. Right. Remember, at the beginning we mentioned that you discounted WACC. Present value of all future cash flows received from A is 18.79. That should be your interpretation. Right. So let's move on to project B. And let's calculate net present value of B. You have your cash flows, then the present value is future value over 1 plus R to power n. Investment, present value is 100, 70 over 1 plus 10% power 1, 50 over 1 plus 10% power 2, 20 over 1 plus 10% power 3. Your present values. $100, $63.64, $41.32, $15.03. So these are the present values, then net present value, the total of all present values. And this mark is sigma. It means the total. comes to 19.98. At 19.98. Now, what does it mean? How would you interpret this? It means the present value of all cash flows received by project B is 19.98. So the present value of all project cash flows received by B is 19.98. Out of A and B, if you are given an option to choose one, that means they are mutually exclusive. Right? You can only pick one. Which one will you pick? You will pick? Yeah, you pick B. Why? Because it gives a higher net present value. You go for the project with a higher net present value if the projects are mutually exclusive. Right? But if they're independent, what will you do? Independent means you can pick as many as you want for as long as each project is profitable. Now look at both projects, both are profitable. So you can pick both. Nothing wrong in picking both. If you have enough money to spend, you can go for both. Okay, so that's how it works. Now, interestingly, look at the cash flows of A, right? You get investment 100. B also investment is 100. Both are 3 years. Weighted average cost of capital is 10% for both. The total cash flows received by A is 10, 60, and 80, 150. B gets 70, 50, 120, and 20, 140. So total cash flow received by B is less. A has more cash flows, but still B has higher net present value. Why? Why is that? How come? They are getting clearly 10 less than A. But how can B get a higher net present value than A? Because look at the cash flow patterns. Look at how the cash flows are distributed. Like A gets a smaller cash flow first 10, then 60, and then 80. So it's in ascending order. B gets cash flows in descending order. The bigger chunk comes at the beginning, then small amount, and an even small amount towards the end. Right? So the bulk comes at the beginning. They're getting cash flows at the beginning. The very inception itself, they start pulling cash flows. Let's say adds to the present values. Present value will increase when you get bigger cash flows upfront. Right? So in spite of A getting higher cash flows, B gets higher cash flows at the beginning. So it becomes more attractive. That's why it ends up with a higher net present value. Yeah. Right. So what are the advantages of net present value and the disadvantages? Now, process, it looks at entire project. So all the cash flows are looked at. No, it's not only up to payback period. No, even beyond that, you look at. Right. What else? Considers time value of money. Unlike payback, net present value looks at time value of money. Then the negative is it's a little more complicated. It's more complicated than payback. Right? A little more, you have to use your head a little more. Not as easy as payback. Slightly more complicated than payback. Right. Okay, so looking at payback alone, if you have to pick a project, you will pick, and if the projects are mutually exclusive, you will go for the one which is given the higher net present value, right? But is that all that you need to look at? Now you look purely from a financial point of view and pick the highest profitable one. Is it how everything works? Not really. You also have to look at non-financial factors. There are factors which are non-financial, isn't it? Now, for example, Gillette, right? Gillette, it sells the razor as well as blades. So it sells, in fact, the razor sells at a loss. They make a loss on razors, right? But what really makes the money is the razor. Sorry, the blade actually makes the money. The razor is at a loss. It's a loss leadership product, but the razor makes money. Why? You can only use a unique razor, a unique blade on the razor. Okay, so now if that is the case, if they look at these two products, can Gillette ever drop the razor because it's loss making? And can they increase sales of blades because it's more profitable? No, it cannot be done. Why? Because if they drop razors, then the entire purpose is lost. Nothing will sell. No one is going to buy Gillette blades alone now. Why will you need blades? No one knows. You won't need blades, right? It has to go hand in glove. So you can't look at financial factors alone. You also have to look at non-financial factors. Now, non-financial factors might be maybe things like CSR, right? It might boost your image. It might look better for you if you undertake the project, even if it's if the profit potential is less. If you undertake a project, it might look good on you. Then maybe there is a legacy involved in this, right? This is your pet project. Whatever said and done, you go with it. You don't look at real profits. Profit is not the concern. Maybe it is a support service. You cannot drop like Gillette and the razor and the blade of Gillette. Maybe knock-on effects on other projects, right? If you need lots of expertise in one project, and it's not something that you already have, you need to hire it. Maybe there are other complications like cultural cash clashes and all that. You can't really do it, although it might look profitable on paper. Okay, so these are the things that you need to look at. You need to look at both financial as well as non-financial factors. Okay, right. So today we covered payback as well as net present values, and time has run out. We will catch up next week through a live session. Until then, stay safe and be good.